Hello, my name is Chris McCart, and I coordinate the outdoor education program here at Black Hills State University. This is an interdisciplinary program. Students in that program study science, so they understand the outdoors, and then they also study the areas of environmental education, interpretation, and adventure education. These students go on to teach others about the outdoors and translate complex science into everyday language that the general public can understand. I teach a lot of courses, and I'll give you a quick tour over some of the things that I do before we start our topic for today about aquatic recreation. I'm going to feature some of the pictures of my own students in these classes. Here's some of the classes that we do here in outdoor education. So the one you're seeing here is environmental education. This is where the students learn about how to teach, best practices for teaching, and then how to teach different age groups in different outdoor education settings. This class helps them develop a connection to the outdoors and stewardship and critical thinking skills in order for these students to grow up to be good environmental stewards. We also have classes in environmental interpretation. This is a communication skills class where we learn how to tell the story of a place in order to develop emotional and intellectual connections to that place. Another class we have is interpretive media. This is where we tell the story of a place through signs and exhibits and newsletters and brochures and videos. And so we learn best practices for that. Another class that we have is outdoor leadership or outdoor skills. This class, folks learn how to lead people in outdoor adventure activities, those activities that might have a little bit of risk, like winter camping, leave no trace outdoor ethics. They might learn about things like leadership theory and communication skills and how to work with diverse groups of people in the outdoors to help them have successful outdoor adventures. Another class I teach, and the ones people think about the most when they think about me, is the outdoor skills classes. I teach orienteering or map and compass, how to navigate in the backcountry so you won't get lost. I also teach classes like archery, so target style archery. We also teach courses beyond archery. They might include classes like rock climbing. We live in a beautiful area for rock climbing, and we teach courses to help folks not only learn rock climbing, but how to teach it to others. One of my favorite classes to teach since my days with Game Fish and Parks has been fly fishing. And this is how we teach folks a lifetime outdoor activity and how to have success catching trout in rivers and streams and lakes in our area. It also includes some fly tying and fish cooking and cleaning. A new course for us is kayaking, whitewater kayaking. So we learn how to do this on class 1 and 2 rivers. So it's not as scary as it looks. And so we have that aquatic class. How do you do it on the lake? And also we teach canoeing, how you work with groups of folks on lakes and also rivers. So what are the American Canoe Association paddle sport skills? We have a cross-country ski course. This has been a big area for that. How do you ski on groomed trails, and how do you go into the backcountry? Another course that we have here at Black Hills State is backpacking. We have a course in August. It's a 5-day course. We go to the Bighorns, to the Cloud Peak Wilderness area, and we get to practice all the skills in order to backpack. We also bring in other instructors to teach specialty courses, such as every so often we have a scuba class that we sponsor, and every year we bring in the National Outdoor Leadership School to teach wilderness medicine and provides first responder certification. I also advise the Collegiate Outdoor Leadership Program, and I really encourage you guys to consider participating in some of the activities that they sponsor. They do a whole lot of different things. And if you really want to jump in, folks can also become outdoor leaders in order to plan and lead those activities with other people. They do a number of things from sponsoring clinics to taking folks out snowshoeing and cross country skiing to doing fly tying to teach outdoor cooking skills. They also go on field trips like to high ropes courses or to Badlands to go camping. There's just a lot of different things different students group choose to do through the years. So that's kind of a summary of some of the things that we. I hope you enjoyed that tour of the Outdoor Ed program. I understand that the Ramseys have shared videos of the history and the biology of Spearfish Creek with you. They've asked me to share about aquatic recreation on the creek. I'm going to make a connection between aquatic biology and aquatic recreation activities and how a knowledge of biology can enhance your enjoyment as well as your success in your recreational pursuits. We're going to go ahead and we're going to look at three of my favorite things: fly fishing, exploring nature, and kayaking. Okay, so if you want to catch trout, you got to know what trout eat, and you got to know how trout eat. Trout either eat opportunistically or selectively. Opportunistically is like when you get home from a long day of classes and you will eat anything in your refrigerator. Trout sometimes feed like that. But if there's something going on in the stream, a bunch of things are hatching or flying and landing on the water, the trout will switch to selective feeding. And that means they're going to key in on a specific thing going on. And that means you're going to have to match the hatch. Let's meet some of the fish foods that are out there. There's four really important groups for fly fishing. There's mayflies. You can tell them by the upwings. Stoneflies, you can tell them by the flat wings. Caddisflies, you can tell them by the tent wings. Midges, you can tell them because they only have two wings. Now, these four categories of aquatic insects that live in Spearfish Creek and all around Spearfish Creek are interesting more than just for trout fishing, because maybe you're not a trout angler. Maybe someday you're sitting over at a football game and this little insect flies through the air and lands on you. And you can look at it and say, why, look at that mayfly. Let's see if you remember how this is. Quiz yourself in your head. If they have up wings, they're mayflies. If they have flat wings, they're stoneflies. If they have tent-like wings, they're caddisflies. They only have two wings. They're midges. Let's take a look a little bit more closely at these critters and how living in the creek makes them trout food. So here is our four groups. The mayflies are upwings, the stoneflies are flat wings, the caddisflies are tent wings, and the midges or the two wings. Now we're going to go through each four group and introduce you to the kids and the adults. The kids live underwater and the adults live above water, which is pretty amazing if you think about it. They have to breathe with gills underwater, and then they have to make a huge change to be living up in the air when they're an adult. The first group is the mayfly. Now, I always like to mention their order name is Ephemeroptera because they have such an interesting life cycle. You see, they start as eggs, and then they hatch into little bug-like critters. They're not bugs, but they hold on to rocks and they eat algae. And at some point in their life, they all often will emerge together, be on top of the water. Their wings will come out. And when their wings are set to go, they'll fly up, find their significant other, and finish the life cycle. The female will come back to lay their eggs, and then they die. So the thing is that's so interesting is they live most of their life as a child underneath the water. And they have a very short or ephemeral life as an adult. So some of them don't even have mouth parts, so they can't even eat as an adult. So ephemeroptera, ephemeral, only live for a short time as an adult. Now, what's cool about these guys is look at those babies there. I mean, isn't that adorable? It's called a nymph, just like a grasshopper is a nymph. It has 3 tails. It has gills on its abdomen. I like to think of that as hairy armpits, and 6 legs. The wings, again, on the adult are up wings. Now, the next crew, the stoneflies, those are also really fascinating. You'll notice there is the letter T in stonefly, and most stonefly babies are nymphs, and they have 2 tails. And when they emerge, they become the adult stonefly, which have the flat wing. Now, in the third of the 4 groups that are really popular trout foods are the midges. Now, this group follows a completely different life cycle. It's a lot more like a butterfly. When their babies are under the water and their eggs hatch, they look like little larvae or caterpillars. Larvae is the right word. And then they transition into pupa, and then those turn into adult midges. These are generally really small. Mosquitoes and crane flies are examples, and they only have 2 wings. That's why the name is Diptera, for die for 2 wings. So that was the 3 groups, the mayflies, the stoneflies, and the midges. But our last group of trout food, the caddisfly, I think is the most fascinating. And I encourage you to go down to the creek, find a really fast flowing part of the stream, pick up a rock, look underneath it, and see if you can find these guys. Now, their life cycle is pretty cool. They too follow the butterfly plan of complete metamorphosis. They start as a larvae, and then they change into a pupa, and then they come out as an adult into the air, and they have tent-like wings. But look what they're like in their baby phase. A lot of these guys are house builders. They might make it out of pine needles, they might make it out of rocks, but they have a nice safe place to hide in as they grow up. So as you look underneath that rock in the creek, sometimes you'll see these little rock casings, and you know you've got caddisflies. So how does this help you catch fish? Well, what you've got to do is match what the fish are eating with what's in your fly box. And a good rule of thumb is to first match by size. I mean, fish have really small brains, so if it's about the same size, they'll go, yeah, I'll eat it. And then by shape, does it have wings or is it a nymph? Where's it at? And then last, by color. All right, keep this going. So we learned a little bit about the trout food. Now, a fly angler tries to create lures or flies that look like the trout food. So probably now you know why they do this thing called fly tying. And so what they're doing is they're creating a critter that looks like the food that the trout are selectively probably feeding on. All right. So let's make a connection to that long digression on trout aquatic insects. All right, here's my dad's fly box. And so if we go and look inside, and if I were to fill this out, I see a lot of different things that are like what trout eat. For instance, this little guy here. There he is. Has something stuck on him. This looks like a little caterpillar, and he's kind of red. This is matching those midge larvae. And so this is a great thing to fish. If you go digging in the creek and you see, hey, lots of little red worms there. Awesome. Now, let's say you're digging in the creek and you see a lot of little guys with 3 tails and hairy armpits. mayfly nymphs. And you go ahead and you see that guy. It's a pretty common pattern called a pheasant tail nymph. And what you can see with this guy is he's small and he's aerodynamic for the water to flow by him. And so this is what you would fish, and the bead head helps it sink and attract curious trout. And that right there can help you catch some fish who are feeding on baby mayflies. Now, of course, maybe some of those critters are keying on an adult mayfly. So see this right there? So this guy right there, I've tied it so he has his wings. These are up wings and a little flowing hackle to help him float. This is like the mayfly that lands to lay her eggs or is drying the wings out before they go off to meet their significant other, wink, wink. And so that right there might be what you would do if you see a hatch going on, and these guys are emerging and floating along the creek. Of course, there's other things that fish eat, I mean, do you have a lot of, dragonflies in your pond? Do you have a lot of grasshoppers floating around? Now, these guys are not aquatic insects, but they might happen to live along the stream and then get blown into the stream and become trout food. So what's really fascinating about trout and trout food is it makes you really observant of what's going on out in nature. And the more observant you are, the better angler you are. Or if you know your biology, you're going to catch more fish. Okay, when you know what fish eat, you can figure out what kind of fly to use. The next question is, where do you cast that fly to? Well, you do it where the trout are. How do you figure out what trout hang out? Well, they hang out where there's a place for them to hide from the predator birds like the eagles and where there's oxygen. Trout like oxygen. So where that stream is mixing and bringing in some oxygen and mixing that up, good chance of finding trout there. You also might find them at outlets where oxygen's also mixing in. And so if you go places where there's cold water with lots of oxygen and oxygen mixing in and a place for trout to hide, you're more likely to catch fish. Voila! Biology helps you catch fish. All right, my first part of my video, I talked a lot about how knowing biology makes you a better trout angler. But there's other things that are fun to do in the outdoors where a knowledge of aquatic biology makes you more successful. And so we're going to go ahead and turn to those activities now. This first one is nature enjoyment. Here's my Ranger Rick nature bag. Sling that over. And inside are 2 tools for enjoying the outdoors. We have Field Guide to Birds, pretty classic one there, and my binoculars. Let's find out one story about knowing a little bit about the life and biology along Spearfish Creek can really add to your enjoyment of it. I'm going to start by telling a story about one family vacation out to the Black Hills where we came to Rough Rock Falls, and I was walking around exploring and seeing things and, enjoying the moving water and the rushing stream. And then I noticed this bird. And it really caught my eye because the bird was bobbing up and down, bending its knees and doing something I'd never seen birds do before, which was, basically bebopping. So I looked a little closer, and then I saw that he seemed to be eating bugs in the stream. And I thought, well, gosh, I've never seen that before back on the farm. And then I looked a little closer, and this bird, he just started sticking his head in to get at some of those bugs. Well, I had never seen that before. And I thought, I have found a crazy bird. Oh my gosh. And then to top it off, this bird, after it fed on the bottom for a while, it just went up and swam underneath the water like a fish. And I was just shocked. I didn't know what was going on with that bird. So, of course, I went back to the car, got the family bird book, and took a look. And I realized I had run into the American dipper. And the American dipper is a pretty rare bird. It lives only in a few spots with clean water and fast moving water like Spearfish Creek that has a lot of oxygen to have a lot of benthic insects and nymphs for this bird to eat. And I'd been really lucky to see it. And now, every time I go down Spearfish Canyon, I always look for the bobbing dipper, the American dipper, as it's dipping up and down in the water. So, at this point in the video, let's do a recap. We've talked about going fishing in Spearfish Creek. We've talked about going birding along Spearfish Creek. I really like to go hiking in the canyon. But there's another thing I really like to do in Spearfish Creek, and that is go kayaking. So in this next section, I want to show you about how you can enjoy the creek by going kayaking. But before I do, a few words of wisdom here. Number one, you should never be paddling on water that's above your ability. If you've not kayaked much, you should be on flat water, and then you should start on easier water than Spearfish Creek, and then move up to Spearfish Creek. Number two, you should always wear a life jacket when you're paddling. Only fools go paddling without a life jacket. Number three, you should only drink water or other non-alcoholic beverages when you're paddling. Save the fun beverages for after you're paddling. Too many tragic accidents have happened because people ignore that rule. The last rule I want to remind you is that you got to take 5 to go on class 2 or higher water. What's that? You have to have a boat that's designed for whitewater. So it can't be a cheap boat from Walmart. It has to be one with adequate flotation and design and stability to be in that kind of water. Number 2, you need to have a skirt so the creek won't flow in, and know how to get yourself out of the skirt should you flip over. Now, that's either called a wet exit, or if you can, you're going to be able to do a kayak roll and pop back up. So that takes some skill. The third thing you need is your PFD. Your fourth thing you need is your helmet to protect your head. And the last thing, of course, is your whitewater paddle that's fitted to you. So you have to take 5. Now, one other word to the wise is you have to know your river. It all has flows. There's certain flows that are safe for kayaking, and there's some flows that are dangerous. It can be too low, a real bumpy ride, and it can be too high, which is too dangerous to be paddling. You're looking for the Goldilocks of river flow. You're looking for just right. How do you find that out? I'll show you in a second. But before I do, I want to show you one more thing to keep in mind when you're paddling on moving water. Imagine that there's trees in the water, and there is a lot of down wood up in the canyon on Spearfish Creek. If you're a kayaker, you could get caught in those trees. Those trees are called strainers. If you get caught in there, you're like spaghetti in the colander. The spaghetti stays, the water goes through. Same happens with kayaks. If you get caught upstream of one of these jobbies, your kayak gets stuck. You could be stuck underwater, and that is a low oxygen environment. This is not good, all right? And it's very hard to get out of that in time. So you have to have the skill to scout, you have to have the knowledge to scout, and you have to know, be with your friend who could protect you should you make a stupid mistake. So you don't want to become a human piece of spaghetti. So keep that in mind. If you want to learn some skills, we have a class at BH on kayaking. And we also have a friend of mine has a company down in Rapid called Black Hills Paddle Sports that rents whitewater boats and gives whitewater lessons for paddling here in the hills. So let's go ahead and see some pictures of paddling in the hills and places you can go if you want to do moving water paddling.
We're ready.
Can you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Aisha Durfee, and I'm one of the ACA kayak instructors, and I'm doing a video for Black Hills State University.
Coming in hot.
Let's take a break from the kayaking videos to look a little bit at the paddleable waters in our area. We've been focusing on Spearfish Creek, and so let's take a look at Spearfish Creek here on the American Whitewater site. And it says we've got a couple spots that you can paddle. This part here in red, this is what we call the town run. Let's unpack this. It describes where it goes. It describes the class. So class 2, that's the part where you have to take 5, and you have to have a helmet, you have to have a whitewater boat. And it describes the flow. CFS stands for cubic feet per second. Now, right now it's red, meaning it's low. You're going to be bumping against rock the whole time. It's not a lot of fun below about 80 CFS. Above that to about 250, super fun to paddle, and you're avoiding a lot of the rocks. You don't have to bounce down. Above that, it's just going to be too high, and that's dangerous as well. When it's going, it's really squirrely. There's no eddies or slow waters to tuck into if you want to park for a while. So you are looking again for the Goldilocks. So notice that's class 2. And notice I said you should always paddle at your ability. Well, there's another river there, the Redwater River, just north of town. That's a great beginning river to start paddling on. Now, this is the stretch from the Old Bell Bridge to the bridge that's just before Cadillac Ranch, that it's a class 1 and sometimes 2 stretch of water. This one's currently ready to go. It's at green for running. This tends to run year round, so it's a great place to paddle. Notice that with this one, you don't necessarily have to worry as much about getting caught up in some crazy water because it's only class 1. Let's take a few pictures of some BH students and some of my friends paddling here on the Redwater, which is a totally different experience.
Paddle! Get those plates in the water! Paddle now! Paddle!
Keep paddling! Keep paddling!
I'm about to attempt a full roll. Hopefully I don't die. 1, 2.
Oh my God!
University professors teach, and I get to teach some pretty cool things. But they also do research and they also do service. My research is I study how people develop their outdoor ethics. I want to end with a story about how Rapid Creek really suffered because people forgot to think of others. A lot of people would go fishing at different watersheds and they weren't washing their waders and their boots and their boats. And they started carrying aquatic invasive species with them. They were getting them on their felt boots, and there are these cute little microscopic diatoms, except they made long chains. This is called rock snot or didymo. So do a favor. When you're out there on the waters, if you're going between watershed, make sure you wash your equipment, wash your boots, wash your boats, so that we can make sure we have um, clean and balanced ecosystems for everyone to enjoy for their aquatic recreation.
Woo, look at him go. Oh,
Don't give me a rock.
oh, he's totally heading across the lake. That's awesome.
I need to learn how to do this.
Thanks for watching my video. I hope you learned a little bit about Spearfish Creek and about how biology comes into it and helps me enjoy my recreation that much more. It helps me with my fly fishing. It helps me enjoy nature and bird watching. And it's super fun to be out kayaking and see more than green, but to see the complexity in the green. And also, I hope that you think when you're out there recreating, you think about your ethics and how you act on your ethics in order to make the great outdoors we are enjoying now as beautiful for future generations to come. Thanks.